Welcome to the Dominance Academy, where we specialize in revitalizing manhood and leadership. Our approach focuses on developing men to lead with strength and passion, enriching their lives and their families. We provide practical solutions and expert guidance in the realms of sexual education and the mysteries behind polarity and structured power dynamics. Join us at thedominanceacademy.com and restore harmony to your home while rediscovering the joy of a fulfilling masculine presence. It's time to step into your role as a leader and as a man. And now the host of the show, Mr. Justin.
Good evening. Thank you for the warning. Yes, good evening. This is Dominance Academy. I'm your host, Mr. Justin. Sorry about that. My mic was muted. I was just saying that back on YouTube because I was shut down for a little while, and it was because of an image. It was really weird. It was because of the thumbnail, and it wasn't anything crazy. It was just a woman on her knees in front of a guy who was fully clothed, and her mouth was open at his crotch area. And it was like, that was it. And they didn't give me a warning. It would have been nice if they said, hey, change your thumbnail image. You have a few days to change it. If not, then we're going to shut your channel down. But immediately they just shut it down, and then they sent the explanation. It's like, come on. So now I have a strike on my channel for something stupid as a thumbnail. But anyway, so tonight we're going to be getting into domination and why women crave it. You know, some of the psychological reasons behind it, and why they're afraid to admit that this is part of them, and also some of the factors that prevent them from actually getting in touch with that side of themselves. Because I would say that the vast majority of women would like to let go. They would like to let go of their stress, right? They want to let go of control. And this is, I think, ultimately what all women, most women would like. Excuse me. So, right. So without further ado, let's jump into it. I hope you guys are all doing well. For those of you on the live, thank you for being here. And thank you for watching on the replay. If you have any questions, get in touch with me on Instagram or email. All those things are in the description of every video, and sign up for a free consultation. We can talk about your relationships, domination, BDSM, sex, power dynamics, what have you. We can get into all kinds of stuff. So the thing around domination is that, you know, I mentioned it already. It has a lot to do with women's desire to let go. Okay, so it's deeply connected to psychology, biology, social conditioning, and, you know, while modern society, especially today, they emphasize equality and egalitarianism in relationships, it often overlooks a fundamental truth about female desire, and women are just naturally drawn to dominance. And it's not necessarily, what do we got here? Yep. Okay, so it's not necessarily just in the bedroom. It's really everywhere. They're drawn to it. They're drawn to power. Excuse me. And I think this has a lot to do with the the evolutionary psychology that so many red pill guys are obsessed with, and really it's just in the hind brain that says, I want a man that I can rely on. That the hindbrain is saying, go procreate and find someone who can make it so that your offspring will survive. That's basically what it is. And I think if you've read a lot of this stuff, you're quite familiar with the concepts. And how this translates into modern society is kind of odd. Okay, because before it was basically survival skills and brawn and having a bit of, I don't know, I wouldn't call them street smarts, maybe like jungle smarts, right? Or wherever they were living, mountain smarts or what have you. And but today those symbols of survivability, they have become warped and over exaggerated and things like that. So for example, there could be a man who hits the gym a lot and he looks very physically imposing. That will send a marker in her hindbrain, and it'll be like, ooh, this guy looks like a formidable man. Okay. She doesn't know for a fact that if you threw him in the middle of the woods, he would be able to survive longer than a week. Okay. She doesn't know that he has survival skills, but that doesn't matter to her hindbrain. She just sees muscles, and this is not conscious. So her hindbrain is like, muscles, that must mean, formidable man. Okay. Or he, flaunts money, right? Money equals power and options of how you can move through life, right? So a man who has a lot of money, it says to our hindbrain, okay, this man has the ability to do things that a lot of other people can't do, simply because he can just pay for it and make it happen. All right. And, of course, like both of these things, they kind of like work into their ego and all that bullshit. And a lot of the problem is that a lot of guys will pay attention to these things and they say, okay, well, if I want a woman, I just got to get this stuff and then they'll want me. Okay. And on a surface level, that may exactly happen. All right. With having that surface desire, just being interested in. And I can always tell the guys who don't have a lot of experience with women, because they put a lot of emphasis on this stuff. They put a lot of emphasis on how they present, because they're still stuck at the presenting stage, right? After that stage, and you don't really have much of a problem with that, you don't really think about that. That's not any of your conversation points, and your attention isn't in those areas. Your attention moves towards the interaction and how you're able to influence the woman, either through your voice or through your mind, your actions, your sex, what have you. All right. So if you're around guys who are always talking about looks, money, and status, just know that more often than not, these are guys who are stuck at the attention getting stage of trying to make a woman look at them and pay attention to them. And, ultimately that's a very feminine thing to do, right? So just know that, like, peacocking and trying to look good so that women will pay attention to you, this is extremely feminine. Extremely feminine. All right. Now, I'm not saying don't take care of yourself, but if you're doing these things for the sake of, or with the hopes that, or even if there's a little in the corner of your eye of like, are there girls watching? Right. Even subconsciously, this is very feminine. Right. Because you're trying to dress yourself up so that you can become more appealing. Now, guys will say, well, in the animal kingdom, animals, the male animal is always the one who's performing and trying to, bring the bird a blade of grass or something like that, And it's like, well, we're not fucking beasts. Okay. Yes, we're mammals, but we're not fucking beasts. All right. And this is largely what separates us men. Okay. Men from males. It's funny, I was just watching some reruns of Family Guy, and there was an episode where Brian, he meets up with this dog, this old friend of his. What was his name? I don't remember his name. But the friend wrote him and he said, let's meet up in a park. And he's like, oh wow, I've not seen this guy for a long time. So he goes into the park, meets with him, and he thinks that he's still the same street dog that he knew many years ago. And so the dog shows up in a fucking helicopter, and he's wearing this, gorgeous suit and all this stuff. And he's like, holy shit, what was his name? Like Scrapper or something. He's like, Scrapper, wow, you're so different. And he's like, yeah, I go by James now, or some shit like that. And they get to talking and things like that. And he's like, how did you turn your life around? And he's like, well, Brian, you're not going to believe this, but I got neutered. And he's like, you got neutered? He's like, yeah. And then after that huge distraction was removed from my life, I was able to focus and get a lot of shit done. And I was able to create an amazing life based around all this, other energy that I had. And this is the thing, right? So I don't know if you want to talk about vibrations, because I hear people talking about that shit all the time. But if you're talking low vibrations, they're stuck on the procreation level. They're stuck on procreation and pleasure seeking, right? This is really low. You know what I'm saying? So if you know anything about chakras and stuff, it's the first two chakras, right? The survival root chakra, which is at the perineum, right? That space between your balls and your ass. And then the second chakra, which is up above that, which is where the genitals are. That's where a lot of guys operate. They operate in survival and sexual mode. Those are the lowest modes you possibly could be at. That's the same mode that animals are on in the wilderness. Okay, you're just dressed up, you got clothes on a job, and you speak intelligibly. But is all of your drives are based around those two, right? And then as you raise it up, it gets higher, more refined, a little bit more sophisticated. The heart chakra, it's more about a human connection. You get to the throat, third eye, and the crown, and things get more elevated, right? And you stop worrying about the earthly shit as much, and start worrying about higher states of consciousness, and just moving on from the trappings of fucking the bullshit in life. And so my point is that guys are just stuck down there. So they're well, just like the birds, how can I get the little female bird to look at me and accept me? So I'm going to bring her blades of grass, and I'm going to fluff up my feathers and start dancing around in a circle. So if you ever want to see something interesting, look on YouTube, look for a bird of paradise mating ritual. And the males, they have a crazy dance. The feathers, and they spin around, and they do the side to side thing, and it's crazy. And it's what guys do, right? And then they'll pretend that they're not doing it. No, I'm not doing that shit. That shit's for simps, even though they still do it, right? It's still in their mind. So, but anyways, I harp on this a lot about breaking free from the trappings of lust, okay? Because you can't fucking lead if you're being led by your dick. It just doesn't work. It doesn't work, because the aims of the dick are very short-sighted. It just says, I want to get in, I want to bust, and I want to go to sleep. That's it. And so if that's the main driver, then it's okay, what's the shit that I got to do to get to that point, to get to the busting and sleeping point? What do I got to do? And do I have to do all the performative nice guy shit, or do I have to do it but pretend that I'm not, and then which means I'm working even double hard because I'm trying to prevent something that I know I am, but I'm fighting against myself. I was man, why don't you just control the desire to bust and move up off of it? And I was talking to a colleague of mine, He's also a coach. He's been at it much longer than I am. And he said, I stopped giving a shit. He's like, I just don't give a fuck about the woman's experience at all. And he said that, at one time I was just being extremely dismissive, like basically fucking for 2 minutes, busting, ashing my cigarette on their chest, and then telling them to get the fuck out. And he said that they were coming back again and again and again. He had to scrape them off with a fucking spatula, because there's this thing about, like, I don't really need you, that is well, it's pretty alluring to a lot of people, not just women, but it's really alluring to women, because a lot of their efforts are put forth in saying, look at me, grab me, take me in, make me yours, right? Possess me, right? This is making their looks, their hair, makeup, tits, ass jobs, like the whole fucking thing, right? It's just to make themselves as desirable as possible so that they will be taken off the market, and have as many suitors trying to do so as possible, because that's, very ego fulfilling and all that bullshit. But it's like the guy who's like, I don't give a flying fuck what you do, where you go, whether you're here or not. It really doesn't fucking matter to me. Like, I might as well be asleep while you're here. And it's just interesting to hear somebody who's been at this longer than I have, and other mentors that I know that are older than me, and they don't give a shit. They care so little for, like, the woman's emotional experience and, like, her sexual experience and making sure she's satisfied and all this stuff. They're just like, I don't care. I really don't care. And if you do care, like, that's fine, that's your thing. But I just noticed that as men age, you give less and less fucks, like, about anything. And this kind of draws people in a weird way. To, like, there's something magnetic about somebody who's willing to let go of anything and everything at a moment's notice, whether it's your feelings or your position or your fucking job or whatever the fuck it is. Like, you're just like, yeah, fuck, I don't give a shit. Let it go, let it burn, the burning of the ships sort of mentality. And this, coming back to domination, it ties in. It ties in because, if you look at the psychology behind it, you look at say, like, romance novels, the man is not in it for her, right? He's got this other mission. He's got something else going on in his life. He's on this huge police case. He's searching for the lost diamond of fucking whatever in some jungle. He has this other fucking thing, and she's just this ancillary piece that's brought in. And what's interesting is that a lot of times the female character is kind of bratty. Like, she's got some edge to her, and she's very relatable to the female readers. Like, she's friendly, she's flirty, she's fun, but she's also got, like, some good moral traits, and she doesn't put up with a lot of shit. Like, she gives the guy some resistance, but he's like the magic man who's able to break down her walls and allow her to feel feminine, right? And this is where the dominance comes into play, all right? Because what happens is that, let's just kind of bring this away from stories and just talk about just real women, okay? A lot of women are fucking working now, right? That's what they chose. They chose the college degree. They chose the career. They chose to get into the workforce. And it's not fucking fun, right? Yes, it's fun to earn money. It's fun to be able to do your own shit because you've got money. But it comes with a cost. It comes with stress. And unless someone has learned good stress coping skills, right? Not drinking, okay, which a lot of people turn to. It's not drinking, but they learn skills to cope with stress. A lot of people don't have this. So what happens is, I believe that women are just not as well adjusted for that, because they're so deeply connected with their emotions. Like a lot of guys, I don't know, maybe my generation, maybe young fucks have a problem with this, but compartmentalizing emotions is super fucking easy. So easy. And I think you younger bucks have a problem with that. You lack that ability, but it's in there. And ladies, they don't have that, because their emotions are so tied in with their psychology, their biology, everything. It's all kind of intermixed. Compartmentalizing is pretty difficult for them. So when they get stressed out, it affects their emotions. It affects the way they think and the way they perceive things. It affects the stress that's in their bodies. And this prevents them from being vulnerable. It prevents them from opening up. It prevents them from softening up. And so guys will kind of come into contact with these women and be like, damn, she's so fucking hard. Like, why can't she be just soft and feminine? And it's like, trust me, there's part of her that really would like to. And she would love a man to be able to dismantle the armor that she's got. Really would love that. Because it's almost impossible, or it's very difficult to take off on one's own, because again, it requires certain skill set and a workings of the mind. And it's kind of hard, because it's sort of like Alan Watts says, pulling yourself up by your own bootstraps, or touching the tip of your finger with the very same finger, right? She who is being examined is also the examiner. So it's hard for them to do this on their own. So that's why when a skilled man that she feels she can trust can remove this stress from her, which allows her to melt. It allows her to melt away, and now she can become vulnerable. Now he takes the lead, okay? And so there's this huge appeal to letting go, right? Because at the core of all of this is the female attraction to polarity, right? It operates on polarity. And the masculine energy, it's assertive, it's grounded, it's leading. The feminine energy, by contrast, thrives on surrender, responsiveness, and emotional expression. So, like in a sexual context, when a man confidently takes control, a woman's natural response is to let go and allow herself to fully experience the pleasure and the losing herself without inhibition. That's really what she's after, is to lose her sense of self, which is a scary thing to do, to let go that much. Okay. So really, like when, we're looking at like say I'm in New York, like your average, say 30 something in New York who's single, their daily life is filled with stress, decision-making, social expectations. They're like, oh, you need to be independent and in control. And then, when they get into sex with, when approached with dominance, it offers an escape from that mental load. So when a man takes charge, a woman doesn't have to think. She just feels. And this can be incredibly liberating and intoxicating. Okay. So this is where the addiction can come in, right? Because it's like, holy shit, this is like a drug that's greater than any drug, right? Because like drugs will do this, but you can feel that it's a drug, right? Yes, if you drink and you get a heavy buzz on, or you get drunk, similar things happen. It takes the edge off of stress, but it doesn't make you open. It doesn't make you as open. It doesn't make you feel vulnerable. Just your inhibitions are down, and that's not quite the same thing. Same with other drugs, and there's synthetic or not unnatural feel to it. Okay, you have to bring something in from the outside in order to achieve this, and this is where it differs, because when a man is leading her into this, it's not an addition of something. Okay, it's a subtraction. He is allowing her to remove, not to bring on. Okay, not to bring on alcohol or bring on drugs. It's a removal of certain things, certain mental roadblocks. All right. So, back to the psychology behind it. It's a lot of psychologists, they refer to as cognitive offloading. Okay, so that's what the brain is just full of like tons of shit and a lot of activity, and it can offload and the brain can relax because someone else is making decisions. Right. So in the bedroom, this translates to a deeper level of pleasure, deeper level of release, where a woman can surrender to sensation and relaxation rather than overanalyzing the experience. Okay. And you can tell this of women. Like, if you've ever been with a girl who is constantly checking herself, like she's fixing her hair, that sort of thing, like you can tell she's putting on appearances so that she's always looking sexy, right? Real sex is not sexy, right? It's not a pretty thing. I mean, you can find beauty in it for sure, but more of like a poetic beauty. But aesthetically, fucking is not exactly pretty. All right. So for these girls that are trying to look pretty in the bedroom, like at all times, they have a very, very difficult time letting go. And I remember my girl was telling me a story about this woman that she knew who was exactly like that in the bedroom. And this woman she knew could not let go. She had a lot of inhibitions, and she couldn't release herself from them. And she was constantly preening herself during sexual acts to make sure that she was pretty enough to be accepted. Like that type of woman, when she gets to the point of letting go, this is like where the crygasms come in, where it becomes this cathartic, therapeutic experience for her. Okay. So the way like a dominant man can bring this out, I mean, of course, there's a lot to it, but in short, it's when he's betting on himself, he's moving with certainty and confidence, and he's establishing clear leadership, like through his mind, then his words and his actions. Okay, so like everything is in line. The thoughts, words, and actions, they're all in synergy. Okay, and when there's consistency, it builds trust. It builds at least just confidence, like on the fly. All right. So it makes her feel safe to a degree, because trust has a lot of fucking layers to it. All right. So, it's kind of like if I were to invite you over and I said, hey, I just took up carpentry and I made a chair. Okay. Would you like to sit on it? You wouldn't just, most people I think would kind of check it out, because they're like, have you ever done carpentry before? It's like, no, I just decided to make a chair. So you're going to test it first, kind of lean on it, press on it with your hands, kind of give it a little wiggle before you sit down. And you're like, oh, that's not bad. And then say like, some days or weeks go by, and make another chair and another and another. And they consistently are solid. They're solid chairs. And now your confidence in me grows because I'm being consistent with what I'm doing. And now when I invite you over to sit on my chairs, you don't even think about it. You don't even consider that they might be weak or they might fall apart, because I've time and again shown you that I can make shit that's reliable. Okay. But, and this is where the problems of, say, nice guy shit comes in, because the nice guy is shifty, right? He's always watching for ways where he can get in, where he can make himself be acceptable, and constantly maneuvering such that he cannot be unacceptable. So he's very, very observant and adjusting to whatever the fuck is happening, or whatever's coming out of her mouth, or whatever she's doing. All right. Consistency doesn't always line up with the situation that it's in. Consistency just rolls right through. And sometimes it lines up well with the situation, and sometimes it doesn't. But that's how consistency works. It's on its own pathway, not necessarily adjusting to the pathways based on situations and people that are around it, right? So it's like, I'm not going to change my chairs because some so-and-so is going to be sitting on them or looking at them or buying them. I'm just making what I make. I know it works, and this is the way it is. You know, that's just how things go. So what happens with dominance, right? So when you're practicing this, consistency is one of the most important things. Consistency and trusting yourself, not second guessing yourself. Okay. So sexual dominance, what it does is it activates her primal instincts. Okay. So research in evolutionary psychology suggests that women are drawn to displays of power and strength, like I mentioned before. And because these traits signal a capable protector and provider. Okay. And so this translates to a man who leads, who takes actions, and he exudes authority, right? So you can't exude authority if you have self-doubt. They don't work. You cannot doubt yourself. You cannot fake not doubting yourself. You actually have to not doubt yourself. Like, true domination that she can feel, that she can really feel, you can't pull the wool over her eyes. That's how real this is. It's not a fake it till you make it sort of thing. Sure, you can play around in the bedroom and do some kinky stuff that, you know, many doms may use, but that doesn't make you a dom. That doesn't make you dominant. It just means you have dominant play. Okay? So, you know, I can fuck around on the racetrack with my bike. That doesn't make me a fucking MotoGP racer, right? A lot of things are involved in order to be a MotoGP racer. That goes deep inside as well as my skills outside. There's a lot to it, okay? But I can play around and pretend I'm, you know, Marc Marquez. But who's doing fucking fantastic, by the way, if you follow any of that shit. So the thing that has to happen, right? So going back to what you need to do, you have to bet on yourself. Trust yourself. It doesn't mean that you have to know everything. That's not what's important. You have to, oh my gosh, I don't know fucking Shibari. Guess what? I don't know fucking Shibari. You know why? Because I'm bored with it. I don't have the fucking patience to sit there like a Boy Scout for 40 fucking minutes tying a woman up. Like, don't have the patience. I don't care enough. Okay. I don't know everything about the various areas of you know, dominance and submission play. I don't, but that's not necessary. What's necessary is me trusting me and knowing what my needs, desires, and kinks are when it comes to sexual stuff, right? I mean, of course, this extends into broader spectrums outside the bedroom if you want to take it there, you know, and you've got a woman who's like, I really want to follow you even outside the bedroom, okay? And that's fine, but that just means you need to know even more about yourself. So those guys who say, what does a woman bring to the table? They don't know fuck all about themselves. Because if you know yourself, you can literally just tell her what you need. Therefore, you never have to ask what you need or what she can bring. All right? I already know what's needed. Can you bring it? That's all. That's all that's necessary. All right? So this releasing that I was talking about, the releasing of the feminine, right? So she can live in the feminine and feel it. This is why submission has been a long running basis for so many romance novels. We're talking decades. We can go even further back into looking at ancient stories of the Greeks. You can look at the ancient stories of the Romans. You can look at old poetry, all sorts of shit where there's men and women interacting. Submission has always been there, always. And it's not like it's a trend or anything like that. It shows up throughout time because it's naturally in them. It's naturally part of the biology. And more often than not, I mean, I know there's a lot of guys that would disagree with me, but I believe that domination is naturally biologically linked within men. It's just there's a lot of layers of crap on top, making you believe that you're not what you actually are. And that doesn't mean like coming out of the gate on fire, ready to take over the world. That's not what I mean, right? It's a trusting of the self. It's a stillness within the self. It's no doubt of who and what you are. But anyways, this is why women fantasize so much about submission. Like their number one fantasy of all fantasies is forced sex, right? I don't think I'm allowed to say the R word on YouTube. I'll get flagged or some shit. But it's forced sex, right? Or CNC, right? Consensual non-consent. That's like one of the top kink scenes, like scene play is CNC. And not because they want to be powerless, but because they want to feel the raw intensity of a man's control, a man's will, and his ability to guide and maneuver things, right? And studies show that a significant percentage of women's sexual fantasies involve power dynamics because it comes from inside them. So, the common themes is dominance and submission. It's the woman being taken, right? Now, of course, you guys are, a lot of guys maybe listening to this will go, well, shit, I don't want to do that. I'll catch a case, right? I'll catch a case, or I'll be socially, what do they call that? Like be like socially castrated or whatever you'll try something and I don't look like a fucking Chad. So if I try to be dominant, then she's not attracted to me and I'll be fucking ruined socially. And there goes my social life. I'm cooked. And it's like, no, if you're thinking this way, you were cooked before you even got out there. You were cooked before you even woke up this morning because you have this framework of thinking. It comes from a place of self-rejection. So before you even interact with another human, you're already saying, I'm not good enough. No wonder women don't trust you. How could they trust you or be attracted to you if you don't trust you and you're not attracted to you? Right? I mean, because if you were, you certainly wouldn't be looking to women to do it for you. Yeah. Like I said, the more into this shit you get, the less you need them. And it's a very real thing. It's not a dismissive, like women are worthless pieces of shit. It's not like that. It's just, it's like a 0 point, like on a number line, there's like, remember math class a long time ago, there's like positive numbers and 0 and then negative numbers. They're at 0. It's neither positive or negative. It just is. It's just like a woman. And that's it. It's just neutral. All right. So, one of the reasons that the dominance is so intoxicating to women is because there's a mixture of certainty and uncertainty. Okay, so this can play out in, let me just give you an example. So like mind fucks. So let's say you've got dog wants to go out. Dog wants to go out, hold that thought. All right. Yeah, if I don't let him out, he'd be fucking scratching at the door until I do. You're saying they are neutral in sex play. No, I'm talking about me. I'm neutral. I'm neutral with regard to women. I'm not saying they're great. I'm not saying they're pieces of shit. It's neither. It's just neutral. It's a nothing. And I don't mean nothing in a negative way, just nothing, neutral. Right? That's what I mean. So, where was I? Oh, so the dominance, right? It's certainty and uncertainty. So example would be, let's see, with woman, and there's like, you're doing like a mind fuck sort of thing, right? So you maybe close off her hearing. And so she's got like headphones on. She can't hear you. And she's tied up. And you take out a very large knife, like the big ass fucking Bowie knife. And she's on the bed. Say she's on her stomach. And, her hands are tied in front of her. Her feet are tied behind her, whatever. And you lay the knife down with some force on the bed. And you can see her eyes like, oh shit. Like, that's a big fucking knife. And then you put the knife aside and you take out, say, a sharpened pencil. But she doesn't know you have a sharpened pencil. And now you start dragging the tip of that sharpened pencil along her back. In her mind, you've had the tip of this blade on her back. Now, maybe she knows that you would never do this. Maybe she doesn't. Okay, but she trusts you. She trusts, like, all the way up to this point, there's been some level of trust. So there's that consistency, there's that certainty, like, okay, he's not going to actually kill me. He's not actually going to cut me and draw blood. All right. But then there's this uncertainty where it's like, well, wait a sec, is he using the knife? Because I didn't actually see him pick up anything else. The last thing I saw him have was this knife in his hand. But in your reality, it's just a pencil. Okay, so it's the uncertainty, it's the certainty, it's the anticipation, the release, and the intensity. This is what domination brings. All right, now there's a caveat here. If you're aiming to produce these things, you're still in nice guy syndrome. You're still doing it for her so that she can look at you and go, wow, you're so fucking amazing. Right? And which means your motivation is completely wrong. You're still doing it so you can be validated and be like, ha ha, I'm such a fucking badass. What? Is there no sound? Is there no sound? Check, check, check. 1, 2. Sorry, let me check this. Audio? Check 1, 2. Yeah, it's here. Yeah. So it's not there to say, look at what a badass I am in the bedroom. Okay? Because that means your motivation is to gain her appeal so you can feel fucking cool. You know what I mean? That's completely wrong. It's not about her. Okay? I don't know. I guess you're just going to have to do it a lot to understand that it just doesn't matter, right? Anyways, so that's like just a small example of having both certainty and uncertainty. So the overarching theme is certainty, meaning he's not going to kill me, right? He's not going to gut me here on the bed and put me in a bunch of little plastic bags and send me down a river. So, but there's uncertainty because it's like, well, but in this moment, I don't know what he's going to do. And this is incredibly arousing. So, for example, another one that's non-sexual, right? Let's say you two are seeing each other for a little bit and she's got some, let's say you've got some plans and you say, hey, baby, we're going to go somewhere this weekend. I want you to pack a dress and pack a bathing suit. And she'd be like, wait, what? Where are we going? Like, what's this? What? I don't know what's happening. Just be ready at 4 o'clock on your doorstep. Don't be late. And she'll be wondering, what the fuck? So the certainty is he's not going to just like abandon me in the front of my place. The certainty is like, I trust him that he's a reliable person. He's got something planned. Okay. But the uncertainty of not knowing what the fuck that plan actually is going to drastically increase her arousal mentally. Okay. I don't know. Maybe it will turn around. I have no idea. But so it's a mixture of these things. It's a mixture. And this is what domination does. Okay. It mixes all the yin and yang constantly inside the woman. All right. When it comes to, say, having a structured dynamic. All right. Structured dynamic will have the trust involved and the structure. And it's like, okay, he shows up every single day, but he's got these rules in here that kind of bring out that uncertainty feeling. It can it can arise some of that anxiety, because it's like, am I doing this correctly? Am I following directions? Am I doing it to his specifications? And that can produce anxiety as well. But then that's mixed in with when I do it right, I get his praise. And so that brings in different emotions. So within dynamic, there's so many different experiences, emotions, chemicals, all firing at the same time. And it's like giving her that roller coaster, right? I know you guys like to talk about Chad, and you're like, oh yeah, they love Chad and Bad Boys because he gives her the emotional roller coaster. Well, it comes from the domination. And this is what happens in a dynamic. She's given that roller coaster, but the difference is that it's on a foundation of consistency. So it's like, okay, we got these up and down, but at the base of it, there's him and he's solid. So that just kind of goes into that a little bit. If you have any questions, just, pop them in there. Sounds like it's about you being a mindfuck. No, it's not about being a mindfuck. The mindfuck was an example of the domination. So, but just understand, like, you can't be reckless with this stuff, right? You have to, like, a good dom, they're pretty sensitive. And I don't mean sensitive in the sense that like you cry during movies, but sensitive in terms of you pick up on cues, and those cues may not be overt. They might not be obvious. For example, like the pace of her breathing, has that changed? Pupils, like, are they dilated or contracted? The color of her skin, the moisture of her skin, all of these things, like the tension in her muscles, it's reading all of this stuff. Again, you can't be this observer, leader, guide, conductor if you're just worried about busting, right? Because that's going to just drive all of your attention, your energy down low, and you're not going to be paying attention up here. You just want to get off, right? It's just ego and pleasure. That's it. Okay. And that's fine. Like, if that's how you want to roll, that's totally fine. But you're not going to be able to exactly become dumb. You're not going to be able to be like this. Like, you may be able to copy it and like pretend and lie to yourself, but as long as like your dick is leading you, you cannot lead. It's literally impossible. Okay. Got a question here. So what are some attributes that are within the man to be able to be dominant? Well, I mentioned it before, and E, thank you for the question. A lot of it has to do with trusting yourself and knowing what your needs, your desires, your kinks, your preferences, your rules. Knowing all of these things is what helps you understand yourself better. And the more you understand about yourself, the more you understand about yourself, the more you can trust, right? Like, it's hard to trust an unknown, right? This is why I never bonded well with religion, right? Because that's why it relies on faith. Like, the whole thing that I can't like actually know God in the same way that I know this cup. I'm just like, how do I trust an unknown? I just don't know how to do it. It's counterintuitive, right? Like, I don't have a faith thing. I don't have that mechanism. So, but the more you know, the more you can trust it. The more I know about, this cup, I can trust that it's going to keep being a cup. And so the same thing applies to yourself. The more you know about yourself in greater detail, the more you can trust yourself and rely on those decisions that you make from that knowledge. Okay? So that's pretty much it. No, it's not bad. It just means that you cannot lead if you are full of lust. You're not going to be able to lead because you're going to be following your lust, right? It's a drive. It's an impulse, right? So just know that, when it's done right, it actually enhances the woman's experience. It enhances her pleasure, and because it allows her to trust, let go, be free. And it almost comes to the point where it's like, you will know her desires better than she knows her own desires, right? Because she just wants to be at the point of feeling. That's all she wants to do, is just feel. She wants to be the experience. She doesn't want to think about the experience, right? That's your job, right? You're supposed to be the observer. So 1 foot in and 1 foot out, okay? You can hear it, but you're not listening and engrossed, right? That's why I talk about the conductor mindset. The conductor, he's there, he can hear the orchestra, but he's not listening to it like the way an audience member would be. Okay, he's there, but he's not really there. So, and so what happens is, considering what we mentioned before about like the stress and the control the woman has like throughout her life and all that stuff. Yes, there's physical pleasure, but what this really is about is emotional release. Okay, and even deeper than that, identity release. Right? Because all of those things, remember I said they were all connected: the emotions, the thoughts, the feelings, the actions, the perspectives, the beliefs, all the shit that she has to consider, it's all tied into identity. So what this is a letting go of all of that. It's letting go of all of that shit. Right? And like, you'll see this played around with, on memes and stuff about, like the mindless good girl and, mindless like sluts and shit like that. Like, yeah, that's, sort of what it is. And it's being played up for social media, but it is kind of like that. Okay. More or less slutty. It depends on the person, but the mindlessness, yes, because when she's submitted, when she goes into what's known as subspace, and there's varying degrees of subspace. Some of it is, fairly shallow, and then it can get extremely deep. And there is no identity anymore. Like, she just is. She just is whatever is happening. Okay? And when it goes very deep, it requires a profound amount of trust for her to do this. Right? And it's a really interesting thing to observe, because as men, non-submissive men, we can't go there. Like, it's not within our function to perform this. It's like it's like a car looking at a boat on water. Like, wow, look at that boat, like just kind of skipping across the water. Like, I can't even fathom myself doing that because I'm just meant for the road. So like, what happens with this is that, when they're in this state, this subspace, a woman experiences deep, uninhibited submission, and often feels a profound sense of release, but also connection, right? So her connection is to the experience, and the experience is you, right? And so this is why many women describe intense emotional after effects from dominant experiences, right? Especially when they're sexual, right? Because the sexual energy kind of like really opens up, it fires off a shit ton of brain chemicals and all this stuff and gets their emotions. It's like that one thing that has like all the factors of a woman, like her identity, her emotions, her thoughts, her body, her sexual energy, all that stuff just kind of activated all at once. So that's why it's so powerful for them. And they have these intense emotional after effects. And sometimes, because of the heights that they are brought to, there's a low, okay? And this is often described as subdrop, okay? Because there's this huge flood of like endorphins, adrenaline, even traumatic release, sometimes heavy crying, all sorts of stuff. And when they drop out of that, it's like they're spent. And this is another aspect of domination that's required, is having good aftercare, right? And the aftercare has to do with the tending to the emotional state and the physical state of where she's at. All right, so time to let the little fucker back in. So all right. Fucking little shit. So it's a tremendous release, and they drop way down. And so you got to care for them, right? Well, I guess you don't have to, but I suppose it's the ethical thing to do, or the moral thing to do, not ethical. It's the moral thing to do. And this too brings about a strong connection, to you, right? Because now, not only are you the one that skyrockets their experience, but as they go down, you're the one that catches them too. And guess what happens if you do this again and again and again, right? Consistency. It's like, wow, this guy can take me all kinds of places, emotionally, physically, sexually, and he's got me. I can, and the more you do this, the more she lets go. She lets go more and more and more and more and more. Okay? Like, this is where reverence comes in, high levels of respect, okay? At least sexually, because you could be a fucking asshole outside of the bedroom. But this is where, like, that the worship level comes into play. But, you know, if you're really a man, you're not really giving a fuck about being worshipped. So just know that it can happen, right? You shouldn't be really concerned about getting it or any of this stuff, really. It's nothing to be achieved. It's nothing to be sought after. It doesn't fucking matter. So just know that, you know, when this happens, she becomes more deeply bonded, which is why it's utter fucking bullshit when guys say, well, if she's had more than X amount of partners, it prevents her from pair bonding. Okay, so, which is really ironic, because a lot of these guys, they're really into science, biology, evolutionary psychology. But if you look into this stuff just a little bit about human mammals, you'll know that human mammals don't fucking pair bond. We're not that kind of mammal. There are some mammals that do, right? And actually very few. Most mammals don't pair bond. They don't. And so it's just really funny how some guys, they'll harp on this whole this pair bonding thing only when it suits their arguments about women's promiscuity, and then basically them not just being able to experience that promiscuity. So they have to shun it in some sort of way, because that's the only tool they have is shaming. Because they can't punch her, they can't do, they can't do away with her, and they don't want to ignore her because they're sexually attracted to her. This is like woman, right? So the only thing they can do is just shame them. Right? Because you know damn well, if they were getting their dick sucked every night by a woman, they wouldn't be saying anything about a woman's fucking body count. They wouldn't be talking about pair bonding. They wouldn't give a fuck because they're getting their dick sucked. Right? So it just comes from bitterness, sour grapes, all ego, rejection, that sort of shit. But back to pair bonding. All right. So in the biological sense, pair bonding does not exist within humans. It probably hasn't until before we were in caves. That's probably when it existed, when we had like mating cycles, the way cats do or some shit. But as we evolved towards the modern Homo sapien, we haven't had that shit in quite some time, if we ever did. So. But bonding does happen, not the biological pair bonding, but emotional pair bonding. Now, I know these red pill dudes and all other fucking cultists, they will say, what do they call it? Oh, what is it? Come on. Something about widowed. I don't know, Chad widowed. Alpha widowed. That's what it is. Yes. I think they come up with all these crazy phrases. They call it being alpha widowed, where basically a woman has been with a man who has been so emotionally and sexually influential that she just cannot forget about him. He's just been jammed into her brain like a thorn. All right. That's what this does. Now, of course, guys, you just can't help yourself but thinking, well, I want to do that. I want to be the guy who just sticks in her brain like a thorn forever. That's what I want, right? Because that's what your ego wants, because your ego hates yourself. Trust me, the guy who does that isn't thinking about doing it or wants to do it. It just happens. Okay? So if you're in this place, in that mental space, you got a lot of work to do. A lot. You should give me a call and we'll talk about it more. But you're gonna have to admit to the fact that you want to be that guy first. Right? It's all the path of man begins with truth. Truth to the self, not lying to yourself about bullshit. So, but when you do this, right, when a woman experiences herself through you, she becomes bonded to you. She becomes extremely bonded. And it's not biological, it's psychological. All right. And what this does is it makes her feel more feminine, makes her feel more desired and more satisfied and free. And the freedom comes from her brain, right? Because most women are trapped by their own minds, and it causes them stress all day long. Even if they don't have a stressful job or whatever, maybe they're not even in school, their own minds, the way it works, what the red pillars call the hamster wheel, it's always on at super high fucking RPMs. You ever see a hamster on the wheel and its feet are fucking invisible and that wheel is just flying? That's their brains constantly from the moment they wake up all day long to the point where they go to sleep. And then the next day, it does it again, and then again, and again, and again. Right? So if there's somebody who comes into their life who goes switch, and that thing fucking goes blank, they're like, holy fuck, I can breathe. Who is this man? I need to keep him around. But again, if you're desiring to be that man, if you want to be kept around, you've already failed. I'm not saying the opposite, that you want to not be there, but you also don't want to be there. Right? There's a lot of, I don't know. I guess, Zen shit about it. I guess that's what you could call it. The Buddhists, they have this saying, not two and not one. So if you think about that in a metaphysical or spiritual sense, it will make sense. Not two and not one. And not two minds, two experiences, not duality, but not a singularity either. But it's like that. It really is. So just know that, and I bring this up a lot too, domination is never something that's imposed upon. It's always, always, always an invitation. And I playfully think of it as like you're a spider with a spider's web. The spider doesn't hunt for food, right? It just lays the perfect trap and just waits. That's all it does, just waits. Because it doesn't have to go hunting, right? It's inefficient. It wastes a lot of energy. I'm just going to chill. And I know that what I need will come. And it lands right in the web, and it's like, oh yeah, I gotcha. You're mine. You are mine now. It's just crawling in, wrap it up, the venom, drags it back, maybe puts it up to save for later, or maybe eats it right away, whatever, okay? But it's an invitation into your world. It's never like, I'm going to come dominate you, right? Like, that's not what it is. That's being domineering, which is a completely different thing than dominating. There's dogs making a weird noise. You know, like when they like almost whine and you just hear air coming out and no sound. It's like, what are you doing, dude? Just relax. So just know that it's not about being forcing or demanding, right? And, you know, I've heard people say, well, you know, it's about earning her submission, right? You're not earning it, because to say that you're earning it, that means you're working for the thing, right? Her submission should just be a natural reaction to who you are, not something that you're seeking out to achieve. You just do as you do. And if it just so happens that a woman chooses to want to submit to you, great. That's awesome, right? That it can be a happenstance thing, or you can like literally like invite her in. And this can happen as well, especially for women who are seasoned, right? They're very familiar with DS dynamics. They're familiar with BDSM. So you can kind of like, especially with women who are like that, you don't have to come in hot. And it's preferable that you don't, right? You just come in relaxed because you know who the fuck you are. You know what the fuck you can do. There's no need to prove yourself or boast or put your chest out there or advertise or market or anything like that. You're just chill, right? You don't have to show anything. And you being calm, you being relaxed, you not being lustful, you not being hungry, you not being anxious or eager is the first step in showing her that you're just a calm person to be around, right? That you're not just sitting there like with your claws open behind your back, like just waiting for your moment to pounce, right? That's not cool, right? You're not relaxed. You're pretending to be relaxed while your claws are behind your back, okay? Just chill, sheath those claws, sit back, right? Be fucking James Bond about it. If you want to see some shit, like go watch some James Bond movies that Sean Connery was in, right? He was the best fucking Bond, right? The most chill, the most sophisticated, the wittiest, the most charming, the most sexual without being sexual. It was just, and he was a fucking misogynist, like just straight up like smacking women's asses, and it was okay for that time. And it's just great to see this sort of stuff. I mean, I don't consider it misogyny, but that's how it would be characterized now anyways. They would never be able to produce James Bond movies like they did in the 60s. But anyways, that's not the point. The point is that if you want to do this, you have to know yourself. You got to trust yourself and just go with it, Okay, trust who you are. And if you don't know who you are, like read, do research, talk to me, get to know what the fuck is really motivating you. Because I can like trust and believe it's a lot deeper than just you wanting to stick your dick in a woman and have an orgasm. Right? You just got to give yourself a chance to explore yourself deeper. Like when they say, like, oh, men are simple creatures. No, we're fucking not. We're just as complex as any other human on this planet. All right? We have complex levels of our own psychology. And as men, we're individuals. So you want to fucking get good at being yourself, you have to know yourself, right? Otherwise, you're going to be following this and following that and being influenced by this, being influenced by that. And you're just this weird amalgamation of all these other inputs. Not really you. Yeah? But that requires being all right with breaking away from certain things, breaking away from certain norms. Okay? I've lost friends. I've had arguments with family members. I haven't lost any family, but I've heard stories of those who have. But that's how important the path of man is. Right? Because at the root of domination is manhood. You can't be dominant and not be a man with a capital M at the same time. They one needs the other. Well, domination needs the manhood because that's the foundation of it. Now, trust me, I've met online, not in person, but I've met online some extremely male dominance. And they're the ones who are like, oh, you have to earn the woman's submission. And, the sub is actually the one who's in control. And, the submissive needs to be like honored and treasured and cherished. And, oh my gosh, the submissive. It's like, I think you're actually like a submissive wearing a dom hat, right? Like you want to be this because you don't want to be seen the other way, but I think you're actually that way. And that's okay, right? If you were to just be honest and true about it, right? Again, like I said, this is all about knowing who the fuck you are, right? And maybe a guy like that truly is submissive at his core, and that's fine. But I think more often, there's just a lot of fear with tapping into his true masculine core. Because it's like, like when you like hear people talk about, having a coming to Jesus moment, or you see in movies where a person has an encounter with a god or an angel or something like that, and they talk about like the light being so fucking bright it hurts, and they're filled with the feeling of both love and fear at the same time. That's kind of what it's like when you start communing with the fucking masculine core. Because in order to do that properly, you have to be fucking honest with yourself. And that's where the fear and love comes in. It's this equally powerful feeling. And you get blinded. It's so bright, right? Because man is the light, right? And the woman is the darkness, right? And that is like good or bad. There's no values there. It's just the yin-yang principle. The light is so bright that you can't hide. This is where your truth lies. So you cannot become, active on the path of man while bullshitting yourself at the same time. It comes from being truthful and honest with yourself and not getting emotional about it. Be like, oh, geez, I don't like that about myself. Just say, hey, you know what? That it is what it is. And if I don't like that, well, this is what it is. And I understand why that is. And this is what I'm going to do to change that if it's something that I want to change. But right now, it all gets accepted. This is who I am. And this is the beginnings of you following on that path, right? Of being able to endure looking at yourself with clear objectivity. This is where it becomes real, That's when you're actually on the path. You're not actually on the fucking path because you've routinely hit the gym consistently every week, 4 times a week for the past 7 years, right? Okay, great. You're consistent with your physical health. Great. Okay. But if you're not doing what I'm talking about, you haven't set foot on the path of man. You've just created a healthy body. They're not intrinsically linked, because this is all an inward journey. If I was a quadriplegic, could I still do it? Of course I could. Of course I could. So just know that, like, manhood, yes, if you want to go lift, you want to go do this, you want to build that, you want to create that, you want to possess that, that's fine. But none of that shit is actually connected to manhood, because it has to do with identity. It has to do with tapping into your masculine core. It has to do with seeking and bonding with truth. And sometimes there's uncomfortable realities that are part of that. But this is how you can actually show up real in the world. And if you give a shit about this stuff, women can see this. Women can feel it. They can smell it. They're like, this guy's not afraid of himself, which encourages her to be herself in your presence, right? Because you're not judging yourself anymore, right? So a man who judges himself is very likely to judge her, because he's judgment minded. You let go of judgment of the self, and that tool, that mechanism is just done away with. You no longer can judge her. And that's not to say that you accept her as perfection walking through the door and there's no work to be done. No. No woman is perfect, especially since she doesn't know what your program is. Okay, but you accept her as she is. And if there are any changes that need to be made of, like, a belief, a perspective, a behavior, a habit, what have you, a missing skill, that gets dictated by the program, not by, what's going on inside you. It has to do with the program. The program keeps everybody with their behaviors, in a line, keeps everybody on track, just like a program at school, right? All the students get the same syllabus. So I hope this has, yes, young villain, absolutely. When you get older, I hope you change your name to old villain. But yes, you have to let go of the judgment of self, right? Because it's not, none of it's like that fucking important anyways. Like, the only reason why it feels important because you think it is not really fucking important. Like, all this shit that you're like, oh my gosh, about myself. Like, you're really the only one that gives a shit. And it's just mostly phantoms in your brain. It's not real. Just phantoms. It's some weird shit. But it's like, once you start kind of like loosening your grip on this stuff and letting it go, it just gets easier and easier. And then you start getting lighter. While at the same time, remember I was talking about these opposing, these dualities, you get lighter but more grounded. It's weird. The lighter you get with letting go, right, of your judgments, criticisms, embracing your shadow and all that bullshit, the lighter you become, the more grounded you become. And it's funny, the heavier you are here and here, the less grounded you are. Isn't that ironic? You're unsettled when you're heavy, and you're more grounded when you're light. But, like, again, it's like all of this stuff is tied in, all of it. This is what allows you to actually fucking dominate, right? With regard to interacting with regard to interacting with women, right? It affects them on a profound level. They can feel this. They may not be able to articulate it, right? And say like, well, I don't know, let me discuss what's happening to me. They don't know, right? It would be hard for them to explain. And they're just like, I don't know. I just like it. I like being around you. Right? And that's how it works out. That's just how it works. She just likes being there because she feels better about herself in your presence. But don't worry about that shit, right? That'll just happen as a result. It's more important that you feel better in your own presence. That is the beginnings. That's the first tone. That's the om ahum of the beginnings of your reality of, making it more peaceful, right? Because like what is it? The Hindus or the Buddhists, whatever, they said that the universe was created by 3 tones, om ahum. Started everything. But that's what starts within you, right? And then she's like, dang, I don't know. I just like, he's just that guy. That's being the guy. That guy, as the kids like to say. Like, notice we didn't like talk much about pussy here. Because it's not about the pussy. And then once all this stuff gets kind of like established and you're relaxed about it, now when you start engaging with her body, I guess from a, say more technical angle, now it becomes more about your expression through it, right? Kind of like painting or acting or singing or whatever. Like a lot of times, because I used to teach art. A lot of times, one's difficulty in whatever field of creativity they're in, it's not due to them not knowing certain techniques, and they think it is. So they'll like learn the techniques and stuff, but they still suck. Like I knew a guy who was like this. He was actually a good friend of mine for many years, and he was a very good technical artist, but his shit was dry as hell. Like his paintings had no feel to them, right? Because he was blocked up inside. He didn't know how to express himself, but he could paint anything, right? And so it really starts from within. And then once you start applying technique, so to speak, and we start talking about, okay, remember I was talking about like the mind fuck, that little game there with the knife play, and then you put the blindfold on and show the knife and then use the pencil and all that stuff. Like that now becomes just a fun creative process where you're like, what else can I come up with? What other sort of game can I play that is an extension of my identity, right? And you're not really like considering like, oh my gosh, how are they going to take this or that or whatever? Because the more you trust in yourself, the more she's going to feel that and just roll with it. Because she's like, oh, this is just the reality that we're in. I mean, as long as it's not going past her limits, right? Because everybody has a limit, okay? And puts her in like whatever it is for her where she's feeling actual fear, okay? Or actual pain or actual discomfort psychologically, physically, sexually, whatever. Then she's just going to roll right along with the reality that you're saying this is it. Okay? But there can't be an ounce of just a millimeter of your eye looking to the side going, is she all right with this? Because the second you do that, the spell is broken. There can be no doubt. 0. That's the cut that will bleed you out. The tiniest cut of doubt, you will fucking bleed out like you hit an artery. We're going to learn about the night play in different games. Just looking around, I've always found that regular websites about BDSM are not that great. They kind of stay very general. Do some research around like Reddit. Okay. So if you look up like BDSM scene play Reddit, like Google that. okay, and you might come into stuff, just start digging around. All right, there's a lot of, and I like Reddit because it's not full of advertisements, it's not full of like PC woke generalized bullshit. Like people are like literally like talking about their experiences. You could look up BDSM mindfuck Reddit, right? That would be your Google search term. Certainly you can't use AI because they're all fucking PC woke pieces of shit. So hopefully this is what I'm hoping, that someone's going to develop an AI, conversational AI, that's not restricted in any kind of way. It will just say fucking everything, right? But that will require quite the anarchist developer to say, fuck it, we're doing this. But that will rock the world in half. But anyways, that's for another topic. So check out Reddit. I would say that's probably the best place where you can get real human ideas, and people share their experiences of like, oh, my boyfriend did this, and like, oh, I did this last week with my girlfriend, or whatever, this sub, that sub, dungeon play ideas, whatever, and just search around, but also it gets better when you start using your own imagination, okay? Because a lot of it has to do with, it's not the thing that you're itself, right? Because it's not about the knife. It's not about the knife. It's about emotional tension and release and anticipation and casting of belief, okay, or suspension of belief. So that's really what it is, right? Because you present the knife, that's a suspension of belief, because you're like making your thing like, okay, big imposing knife, right? So you're creating one belief, and then the reality is something different, all right? So just think of the ideas of how you can create this kind of tension of basically saying like something's going to happen, and then you either present that exact happening, and I'm not saying put the actual blade on her body, but like some other sort of thing where she's expecting a thing, and then either you do that thing, but it's delayed, right? So now the time difference, you start delaying when that's going to happen. That starts to be the mindfuck, okay? Or you could do not that thing. So she's expecting this to happen, and then something completely different happens, right? So and that can be like a gassing out of all of that tension of the high expectations, all right? Like there was a moment I was talking about with a client, and his wife had been misbehaving, and she knew that she was going to be getting a spanking, and he said, we're going to talk about this later. And so she was like, oh man, all in her head she was thinking, I'm going to get spanked, this is going to be a hard one. And he knew this. He knew that her own mind would be creating the whole tension, the whole knife thing with the headphones or the blindfold and the pencil. Like her own head would be doing that for her, all that anticipation. And then when the time came and she was so expecting to get spanked, he didn't do it. And that's all the punishment she needed. She punished herself with the psychological torture of the anticipation of the punishment, right? Like you see in movies sometimes when a guy's like strung up and he's about to get tortured for information, and the sadistic torture guy comes out and he takes his roll of tools and he rolls them out onto the table, and it's full of like knives and pokers and blades and all pinchers and pokers and all this stuff. And the guy sees that shit and he's like, oh no, okay, I'll talk, right? So sometimes just the fear or the anticipation or the anxiety of what possibly could come is enough to cause the emotional stimulation for whatever that scenario needs, right? So, in the case of my client, the intensity of her worrying of what's to come for her misdoings, that was enough of a punishment because of that hamster wheel. It spun up and burnt itself out. He's like, I'm not going to do anything. And she was like, what? It's like, yeah, go take a bath and get into bed. And she's like, what the fuck just happened? Right? So it's all about wielding, being aware of and wielding her mental experience, her emotional experience, her physical experience, her sexual experience. It's about being in control. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, if he had been like, oh man, she was like, bratty or whatever, and I'm gonna spank her, but boy, I really want to fuck tonight. Like, it would have ruined the whole thing because he wanted to get off. It's like when you're in this position, like of being dominant, you can fucking get off whenever you want. Like, it doesn't fucking matter, right? Like, I woke up at, I don't know, 4 o'clock this morning. My girl was sleeping. Fucked her. Went on with my day. It's not a thing. It's like it's a given. So you don't have to think about this. It's like, well, how else do I want to express myself? Because that's, again, like with the chakras and shit, that's the low level. It doesn't even have much expression. It just kind of does its thing, Yeah. Yes, this is... Well, I already did. But it's just the idea of like a perceived threat that's not actually a threat. That's all it is. It's like emotional blackmail, basically, right? Like, I'm gonna do this to you, like, you better watch out. But then they think it's what is gonna happen, but you're not actually doing it. It could be anything at all. But please be careful, right? Some people don't like to have their heads messed with. Yeah. All right, I'll answer this and then we gotta get going. Reblast. It's like when an argument happens between a couple, but the man doesn't make it up with sex. Her true punishment was the dick being taken away. That absolutely can be the case, right? But I also know guys who it's not giving the woman a dick as a punishment, but to kind of like reset her brain. Like, I certainly know guys who do this. And after she's been fucked, she's like, okay, I'm back to normal again. And that actually can happen because of what happens to them, because the integration of a woman's psyche, emotions, body, spirit, all that stuff, it can't be separated, right? Unless there's severe trauma that causes them to compartmentalize. If there isn't severe trauma, they can't compartmentalize their sex. It's all integrated, okay? So I know guys who are just like, yeah, she's out of whack, fuck her, and she's like, reset. It's like hitting that factory reset. But others, you're absolutely right. Some will be like, no, I'm not giving you dick. You're getting punished in another way. And that has more to do with knowing your woman's pain points, okay? Because, I know doms with girlfriends and wives who they are not the doms, but the female, they're masochists. So giving them a spanking isn't going to do shit. Like, they get a haul off with a fucking wooden paddle and they're just going to be loving it. So that's not exactly a punishment, okay? You have to know the pain points emotionally that move them to have them realize that they fucked up, okay? Like, so if pulling away your dick doesn't hit a pain point, then it's useless, right? You're pulling away something that doesn't bother them, okay? It's understanding the pain points, and it could be something small. It's just knowing that person. It's knowing what affects them, what strings to pull, and then you get the behavior that you need. So it's not like a one size fits all thing. Like, hey man, if you want to punish this woman, just don't give her any dick. Okay, well, what if she's not super connected to dick? Or like, what if that doesn't, it hurts her, but it doesn't really like penetrate into being like, fuck, right? Like, I need to examine myself, right? It might be disappointing, but you know, it's yeah. If you like research like sales or anything like that, you'll understand like a little bit more about what it is to access people's pain points and shit like that. So, all right. Well, I appreciate you guys coming through and joining me on this stream. I hope that you learned some shit and you know, just understood domination from a different or new perspective. Okay, it's doesn't have to do with fucking whips and chains and all this bullshit. Like, you know, you can get into that, but a lot of it is not necessary. You know, and it just makes it more fun. That's all. It's just like the toys. It's all just for fun. It's not what makes domination and submission. All of that stuff comes from inside. You know, well, I don't have him now, but I had a client who was in a wheelchair, 3 submissives, 3 subs that worshipped and served him all day long. And he lived in a wheelchair, right? Like he couldn't even fuck, but there he was. Okay. So just know that this isn't, you know, it's not an act of doing. It's an act of being. All right. So if you want to learn more about that stuff, get in touch with me. My Calendly is there. Schedule a free call. My email is there. Instagram. Get in touch. Right. It's easy. It's free. Let's get to talking, and you can learn more. All right. Because some of this stuff is not suitable for YouTube, and you know, I like to get into details with the individual. So thank you everyone for coming through. I appreciate your time, and thank you for sharing it with me. And I'll catch you on the next one. Hey, People's Field, just get in touch with me and we can answer your questions. So, okay. So yeah, thanks for coming through. It's been a good time. Time to relax.